Cumberland Gap's not my home. I'm gonna leave old Cumberland alone. Cumberland Gap's one devil of a place. Can't get the water full to wash your face. Lay down, boys, take your reins. Gonna have a battle with ticks and fleas. Me and my wife's pal, run all day through that Cumberland Gap. If you don't care, leave my Jimmy John sitting right there. And if it's not there when I get back, I'll raise hell in the Cumberland Gap.
Well, the Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Well, the Cumberland Gap ain't nowhere 15 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap ain't nowhere 15 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Well, I've got a gal 6 feet tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall. Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Well, 2 old ladies sitting in the sand, each one wishing that the other was a man. Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Well, Cumberland Gap, 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 15 miles on the Cumberland Gap.
Lay down, boys, take a little nap. We're all going down to Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. We're all going down to Cumberland Gap. Me and my wife's pap, we all live down to Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. We all live down to Cumberland Gap. I got a gal in Cumberland Gap, she's got a baby, calls me pap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap. We're all going down to Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, it ain't very far, it's just 3 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, we're all going down to Cumberland Gap.
Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on Cumberland Gap. Well, two old ladies sitting in the sand, each one wishing that the other one's a man. Well, Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Well, A, B, C, W, X, Y, Z, the cat's in the cupboard, but he can't see me. Oh, no. Well, Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 16 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 16 miles on the Cumberland Gap. On a jazz on a hum.
Lay down, boys, take a little nap, 17 miles to the Cumberland Gap. Lay down, boys, take a little nap, 17 miles to the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles to the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles to the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 13 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, it ain't nowhere, 13 miles from Middlesboro. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap. Play it for you, Sonny. Play it again. As I was going down the road, I met that turpin and I met that toad. Every time a tarpon sang, old toad cut that pigeon wing. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 17 miles from the Cumberland Gap.
Cumberland Gap's not my home. I'm gonna leave old Cumberland alone. Cumberland Gap's one devil of a place. Can't get the water full to wash your face. Lay down, boys, take your reins. We're gonna have a battle with the ticks and the fleas. Me and my wife's pal, run all day through that Cumberland Gap. If you don't tell, leave my Jimmy John sitting right there. And if it's not there when I get back, I'll raise hell in the Cumberland Gap.